Hi everybody, welcome back to another week here at Midas Letter RAW, and this week we've got a really big show for you. It's going to blow your goddamn mind. You're never going to see anything like this now. You're never going to see it before, you're never going to see it again. So you better pay close attention. Here's what's going on. We got a rundown for you. Here's the rundown. Where's the fucking rundown? I said, here's the rundown. Where's the rundown? There's the rundown. Okay, so might have had a little bit too much coffee this morning. You might want to put up the rundown over that screen. That's a beautiful shot of outside, but at 3:10, Ricky Gerwitz is going to be 5 minutes late with the headline news for some reason. Matt Bottomley from Canaccord Genuity is going to be here at 3:15, and at 3:30 we're going to talk to Alan Brochstein at 420 Investor. Do you think he invests in stocks? No, he doesn't. He tries to maintain an absence of bias by never being an investor. How can you talk to a guy about investing in stocks when he doesn't invest in stocks? I'll tell you how. Here's how. He analyzes stocks. He's a certified financial analyst, and that's very interesting. Market close at 3:45 at 4:10. Jason Zandberg is going to be here from PI Financial Corp to give us his thoughts on the cannabis space. And if you don't think that's just the cat's whiskers, well, what do you say, Ed?
Talk about not getting a word in edgewise.
Edgewise, well.
Edgewise.
Sometimes the best way to
You should have been a auctioneer.
Who'll give me $50 for this fellow here? His name's big special edge. He's going to $25. $25. Give me $50. $50 sold.
Well, that was quite. Boy, I'll tell you, I'm tired just listening.
Yeah. Well, finally, it's a good thing I don't do THC or CBDs. Oh, wait, I do.
All right.
No wonder we're having such a good time. How do you like my floral pattern? Spring, floral pattern.
Very floring.
Yeah? Takes a real man to wear a shirt like this, let me tell you, Milewski. You're not going to see this every day.
Yep. No.
Who wears a floral shirt? Put up your hand. Drawing the audience's attention to the disclaimer going across the bottom. We are market participants. We are not journalists. We are market participants. Therefore, we buy, sell, and trade in the stocks, and some of them are clients, and we disclose when that is, but there's no further discussion about when or where we're going to be selling because even I don't know. Ed, you buying, you selling, you buying, you selling? What's going on?
We are cone heads.
No, I think, you know, right now we're in a very interesting point. We've rallied back a lot, but not quite all the way. Some of the indices look a little worse than others. The S&P still looks like the best one, but it's come off here. It came off sharply on Friday. Today's sort of a middle of the road day. You know, it's down a bit, was down more. Yeah, I look, the marijuana stocks, I keep looking at weed, Canopy Growth that is, and it's under 59 now, I think, or it was. But I see Kronos, which has been backing off, is up big today. There's a lot of conflicting cross currents here. Cross currents, I would say.
Huh. So shit's going on.
Well, Aphria's up a dime. That's no big deal. Village Farms was way up there to 24 and change, now back to 21-ish. Like, there's some that are really doing well. Others are sort of biding their time. This thing with the interest rates going negative again in Germany is a big thing, I think.
Well, do you think that's why gold has got $8?
Gold's 1330 now. 1330. The big number is somewhere between 13, say 50 and 1370. I think if it gets through there.
15?
1350 and 1370.
Oh, not 1530.
No. We're 60 bucks away.
I've got dyslexic hearing going on.
I got my
today.
own problems.
Okay, so gold has a chance of breaking out here.
Gold looks very close to breaking out. On the other hand, if things slow down, the outlook for copper, even though copper is...
So that guy put the $6 million bet on the spread for a 3-month contract.
And 3-month contract, and copper got hammered on Friday. It was strong on Thursday, weak on Friday.
Now, what are his avenues to exit the trade?
Like, he's got to, I think that someone said he's betting that the spread, which becomes, I think, in the money around 305.
Yeah.
So every time, you know, but then he's capped, right? But I think if it works out and copper goes nuts, he can stand to make probably 4 or 5 times this money in a very short period of time.
What would happen? What would it take on the macroeconomic stage to make gold and copper go nuts? Like, would copper take off if gold took off?
I think they're a little, you know, gold is money to some degree, right?
To some degree, some would argue that
Well,
gold is the only money.
I'm trying to be
I would argue that gold is
diplomatic.
the only money.
You're black and white. I'm a shade.
I got a tin hat and a wooden sword.
Shades of gray.
Shades of gray.
Sheds of gray.
Sheds.
ED. Sheds of gray.
Oh, see, you don't look like you've been shedding lately. Are you finished shedding?
Okay. I think that copper, look, it looks like the economy's slowing down. Copper's been dropping. Gold's been going up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gold, if rates really tumble here, I think gold could get a big rally.
Really?
At low interest rates.
How low?
Well, like they're looking pretty low right now, aren't they?
I don't know. I don't follow interest rates.
Really?
I don't borrow, so I don't care.
Oh, you don't borrow,
I should probably.
You should
No, I
borrow.
don't borrow.
Rates are low. Borrow.
Borrow? I don't know. I've never been able to do that.
You know how when you go borrow...
Leverage. Leverage, I understand. Borrowing.
I need to tell you this. This is important. When you borrow money, you know how you go get it? You get it with a wheelbarrow.
Wheelbarrow. Okay. See, you find that hilarious.
Because it's my joke.
That's pretty good.
That's self-serving.
That's a word
wheelbarrow.
play. Not really a joke, more of like a word play.
A little pun.
Kind of a pun. Punny.
Okay.
What else is going on? So I was talking.
Trump got exonerated by Mr. Mueller, or the Mueller investigation. I don't even know what the hell that all is all about, but they spent a fucking lot of money on that.
Yeah.
To find out nothing.
Well, I mean, to me, it's never. I mean, Russian collusion. Like, does it really matter? Like, the guy has so many other problems that it's like. Well, good. That one's out of the way. Now we can get down to the ones that really have me concerned. Like
I hear you.
You know,
I hear you.
Violating the charitable money gathering laws of the state of New York, multiple rapes and gropings and just slimy money laundering.
I know.
No, I know. Everybody on the Trump side is like, see, we told you, and everybody on the Democrat side is like, nope, that just proves the point. The government said they're not exonerated, so nope. See, he's guilty. I told you he was guilty. He's guilty. Guilty as charged. Hang the man. But either way, up north of Canada, we're just laughing our heads off because y'all's political system's so fucked up. Don't really matter who's the president.
Yeah.
Really? Does it?
Well, it doesn't matter who the prime minister is, apparently.
Two flavors of the same clown, if you ask me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, let's stop beating up on the United States. They got their own problems.
They got their own problems.
Yeah. What about our problems? What kind of problem you got here?
Well, I think the women want to talk up about the Trump. The women are unhappy in the Trump administration.
The women.
I mean, if the Trudeau.
The Trudeau administration.
Well, because all those people are resigning. Like
the Canadian.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, we got our own problems.
We got our own problems.
You know what it seems like? You look around the world, you got this murderous king in Saudi Arabia, or prince. He's a prince, I guess, because he only kills journalists.
No, because the king's still alive somewhere.
That's right. That's right. He's probably got him bound and gagged in a golden cage or something. Oh.
He's trying to make a decree.
Yeah. So you got him. You got the guy in the Philippines. So it's like, you're a drug dealer. Bam! Justice. You've got the guys in China. I can't do any imitation of that guy without incurring a whole bunch of wrath, so we'll just skip that. And then you've got, of course, Putin, who basically, what, you don't agree with me? Blam! Take that. Which is kind of like Darwinism at work. I mean, if those guys are actually arguably the fittest. So does it mean the most murderous and the least scrupulous is the fittest, according to Darwinistic principles? Or is it the corruption of the Darwinistic principle, survival of the fittest, that has allowed this type of not exactly the strongest or the fittest, but the most viable in the current push me, pull you, passive aggressive, democratic, socialist, conservative, never mind. This is why we never talk about politics.
I know. You know what? Look,
I get confused, I get depressed.
It's very, everybody's got a view in politics, right? And religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just, you know what? Let's be glad that, we're very lucky here. There's no question.
Yeah.
I guess we're worried that if we keep going a certain direction, we'd end up like, look at poor Venezuela. It used to be one of the greatest places in South America.
Yeah.
Now it's a shithole.
What did you say?
Well, I shouldn't say. I say politically.
What did you say about Venezuela? Venezuela is a fabulous place. It's just a little fucked up right now.
Yeah.
And it can return to its former. You know, Buenos Aires used to be like the go-to most romantic destination in the world for
Argentina.
Europeans. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Paris of South America.
It was the fastest rising cost of living city of all capitals in the world back in the 70s.
In the 50s. There was an expression to be rich as an Argentine. Everybody wanted to be as rich as an Argentinian.
Really?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Well, now look what happened.
It's...
The rich Argentinians moved away and became Canadians.
They went to Venezuela.
I don't think they went to Venezuela, Ed.
I know. You know what? You know what Argentina stands for, don't you?
What do you mean stands for? It's not an abbreviation.
Argentina. Argent is the land of silver. Argentina.
Silver is plata.
No. Not in French. L'argent.
French.
It's Argentina. Is the land of money.
Argentina was settled by Italians. Why would they be translating?
I'm just saying, Argentina. Argent is the French word for money, which means silver. Argentina. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. I'll take you at your word on that.
Maybe it's just a coincidence.
I could, if I was to disagree with you, it would be from a perspective of I don't know. So I've done enough of that lately.
Okay.
Anyways, so what else is going on?
Looking very, very spring-like again with your verdant.
Yeah, well, this is
colored vest.
You know, got some little marijuana leaves here. We got some cherries.
Yeah.
We got some leftover
olive tree branches.
Got some chicory from last year, and a little violet. That's what we got today.
Okay.
You know what I wanted to do here today while we're on the phone? I mean, on the set.
What?
I thought we should talk to the audience. See, we don't do enough of that.
Let's do that. The audience likes to be talked to.
Talked to.
Not talk at.
No, they like to be talked to. Where is our damn show gone? I don't know what happened here.
Shogun?
Shogun. I'm on the wrong channel here. How the hell does that happen? Where's my channel? My channel. Here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. You know how many viewers we have right now? On the set? 181.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Let's say hello to Nikki Domi, Mind Your Wealth. She's probably pretty much one of the most regular people on the planet here. So hello, Nika. Great to see you again. John Murphy, seen you before. Argentina Ed is correct. John Murphy opines in your favor. See, good thing I didn't wade in there and try to pretend I knew shit. Which
well, if you don't know, better to say I don't know.
Well, that's
no what
problem.
You said.
I have no problem saying that. Mary Kemp is here, and Mary, how are you, Mary? Great to see you again, although I've never seen you. Where are you? She's here, but not there. Let's talk to Ricky Gerwitz about some news, shall we?
Let's do it.
Here are the headlines moving markets today. Canopy Growth Corporation has received a cultivation license from Health Canada for its facility in Fredericton, New Brunswick. With this licensing, Canopy Growth predicts the facility will initially produce more than 5,000 kilograms of cannabis annually, with first harvest expected to become available to the market within 6 months. Developed in collaboration with Canopy Rivers and operating under Canopy Growth's flagship Tweed brand, the facility will support the company's global and local operations. Canopy Growth expects to create more than 130 jobs at the Fredericton plant. iAnthus Capital Holdings has announced that as of March 22nd, it has issued a notice of redemption to holders of outstanding convertible debentures of MPX Luxembourg SARL, a wholly owned subsidiary of iAnthus. The aggregate principal amount of the debentures is $32.26 million US, and the redemption date of the debentures will be April 24th, 2019. The debentures are redeemable for an amount equal to $860.43 US per $1,000 principal amount of debentures. MPX International Corporation has successfully closed its previously announced non-brokered private placement offering of units of the company. Due to increased demand, the previously announced offering was increased from $20 million Canadian to $26.9 million. The offering consists of the issuance of 56 million units issued at a price of 48 cents per unit. The Green Organic Dutchman Holdings Limited announced that sales of certified organic cannabis have started with national distribution to medical patients. The Grower Circle is a select group of patients across Canada now receiving TGOD's first certified organic flower. The Growers Circle launch is a limited production rollout of the company's premium product, allowing TGOD to perfect its distribution ahead of its production ramp-up and scaled rollout this year. AgriFlora International has closed the previously announced $20 million third and fourth tranches of the $40 million equity participation and earn-in agreement with Delta Organic Cannabis Corp. The company has also issued the third tranche of its 44.58 million common shares at a deemed price of approximately 45 cents per share. Brochstein Technology Corp announced comprehensive losses of $1.59 million in its third quarter results ending on January 31, 2019. In Q3, the company announced a letter of intent with NXT Water to launch a HEXO Functional Fitness Water, a hemp-derived CBD beverage. Funds used in operations were $1.4 million for the 3 months and mainly covered marketing campaigns and product development. The variance, as compared to the prior year, was due to having a full 9 months of expenses in 2019 compared to having only startup product development costs and travel costs in 2018. Canaccord Genuity Growth Corp has filed a non-offering final prospectus with the securities regulatory authorities in each of the provinces and territories of Canada. On November 21, 2018, the company announced that it had entered into a definitive transaction agreement with Columbia Care LLC, a leading medical cannabis company in the United States, by way of a merger between Columbia Care and a newly formed Delaware subsidiary of CGGC, which is intended to constitute CGGC's qualifying transaction. Upon completion of the business transaction, CGGC will be renamed Columbia Care Inc. Choom Holdings has announced that it intends to expand into Florida. Choom, through its wholly owned U.S. subsidiary, Choom Holdings USA Inc., has signed a letter of intent to purchase a 95% equity interest in a Florida-based vertically integrated cannabis applicant. Liberty Health Sciences Inc. announced today that it has received Florida Department of Health approval to sell whole flower smokable products to patients in Florida. The company is awaiting DOH approval to provide pre-rolls to patients. Newstrike Brands Ltd. has announced that Up Cannabis Inc., its wholly owned subsidiary, has entered into an agreement with Cannabis NB as a licensed producer to supply cannabis. With this announcement, Up Cannabis becomes one of only 8 licensed producers that currently supplies cannabis to New Brunswick. And that's your news for today.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the little notifications bell. If you're interested in getting monthly actionable investment ideas in the cannabis space to your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter at MidasLetter.com. Alan Brochstein joins me now, CEO and publisher at 420 Investor at 420investor.com. Alan, welcome back.
There you go. Hey, thanks. Good to see you, James.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. So, Alan, give me an overview. What are you seeing in the market? I mean, obviously, we could talk about the end of. I saw your comment on Twitter that cannabis investors should be glad that it's over, which is fair enough. How has the end of the Mueller investigation overall affected the cannabis stock complex?
Yeah, I don't think it's a big issue, but I think it's important to remember a lot of people have strong political views about our president, and I won't go into my own. It's not important, but I think one of the big challenges for our industry is if he were to be removed from office or anything like that, it would leave a President Pence, and I can assure you it's hard to figure out where Donald Trump comes down on certain issues in terms of legality and even for medical. He seems to be staying out of the way, and it's not an issue at this point, and he could embrace it for all we know. But I can assure you a President Pence would not be good for our industry.
Right.
So I was glad to see that yesterday.
Okay, great. So with that, then, in the rearview mirror, what else are you seeing this week in the cannabis space that is exciting you, worrying you, etc.?
Sure. So one of the topics that I started to approach back in September was the retailers in Canada. And at the time, obviously, that was ahead of legalization. Most of these companies weren't well known. A few of them were public. Now we have more public companies. And one of the ones that I picked up on early that was just a total disaster was Alcanna. This used to be National Liquor Stores. North America or something like that. They changed their name last year, and just to show you how bad it is, I think Aurora invested in them at like 14 or something like that, and it trades at 5 now, and that's over the course of the last maybe 13 or 14 months. And so, you know, I usually don't go out publicly with ideas. I usually share my ideas at 420 Investor, but one that I think is, I don't think I'm going to move the price by talking about it, is this Alcanna. And I talked about it in my newsletter yesterday at New Cannabis Ventures, without getting too much into the detail, but I can share some more detail with you because, you know, James, I'm sure you've been there before. You get involved in a theme and a stock and it's not working out, and you have to figure out, well, did I make a mistake or is this just a better deal? And I'll say I made a mistake because I felt that the retailers were going to gain some attention, and I was early. And the reason for that was obviously what happened in Ontario and then in Alberta with delays on licensing kind of messed it up, and then the supply shortages and all that. But I would suggest, whether it's Alcanna or any of these retailers, that people who are following the Canadian LP space open their mind to the possibility that these retailers may be able to command more of the value in that market. They obviously don't have the plays on, in some cases in the United States or globally, that some of the LPs have. But the retailers are interesting because the dynamics in Canada, as you know, are just horrible. The websites for each of the provinces does no justice to the product. And so any sort of new entrant to cannabis, or somebody that hasn't used cannabis in years in Canada who wants to, is going to have a hard time navigating those websites, at least initially, till they get up to speed. And so because of that, these retailers, I think, are going to really play an important role in helping educate new entrants to the market. And I think also, you know, we know that there's a very large gray market and illicit market in Canada. And for that to be displaced, you know, the prices have to be right, including the taxes, and it has to be convenient. And I think some of these stores will be able to pull that off. So long story short, I think that the sector in general is definitely worth following. A few stocks are really doing well and seem expensive. Alcanna, just to summarize the story, this is a turnaround in its core business of alcohol sales, primarily in Alberta. They posted 7% plus same-store sales growth last quarter. This was just revealed last week, actually, or maybe it was the week before. But this is like the best performance they've had in a long time. And when I look at the valuation of this company, it seems like you're getting the cannabis part for free. The market cap is about 180 million, I think, Canadian. And you can look at their tangible book value and all that, and you come up with, it's a very defensible valuation that doesn't even take into account their cannabis business. You can look at other cannabis retailers, and their market caps are even higher than Alcanna with that big liquor business that's now growing again. So I think it's an interesting play within an interesting sector, James.
Yeah, actually, funny you should mention Alcanna. So we've had James Burns on here in the past. He's the CEO. And in fact, I've been following the story closely. There was concern among shareholders about their ability to service some of the credit facilities that they had because of the share price deteriorating so badly. And that is actually, I think, the primary cause of the price deterioration. You know, they have this mutually sort of confirming effect. And just after the company announced its annual results, they announced a whole bunch of reorganizations of these contracts. So that risk has for now been eliminated. And so when you look at the improving numbers from cannabis sales, which at this point, liquor sales in 2018 were 182 million. Cannabis sales were only, where did it go? I had it in front of me here. Cannabis sales
it's just a few months.
Yeah, we're just a fraction.
7 million.
Cannabis sales were 7.8. Call it 8 million, and
8 million.
Yeah. So I mean, as a percentage of sales, it's still like 5% or less. So exactly, the cannabis side of the business is free, and I don't know how many liquor stores they have in total. I haven't had a chance to go over the whole thing, but I think that I think you're absolutely right, and I'm so pleasantly surprised that you actually talked about it in your newsletter, because I think anybody who dives in at this point is going to probably be quite happy. Full disclosure, I'm not a shareholder, they're not a client. We don't have any sort of financial interest in the company whatsoever, so I can say in all honesty that
neither do I.
It's just looking good.
Yep. So, and I would tell your viewers as well, part of why it got crushed was they cut their dividend, and I don't know why they did it at the time they did it. It wasn't a surprise that they did it, but the markets were melting down in December, whether we're talking about in cannabis or the broader markets, and they got rid of their dividend, and a lot of people owned the stock for the dividend, and they weren't prepared for it, unfortunately. And so the stock ended up going way down. It's crazy. And so it started to rebound. But I'll just make it really simple. I think you can look at the company, forget they're a cannabis company, come up with a valuation that I think is where it is now. And then you go and you look at some of the other cannabis retailers. And I'm not saying they're the best, but I think they really have the chops to pull it off. And they're already up and running in Alberta with 5 stores. They're one of the retailers that was able to get one of these lottery Ontario stores as well. And for the future for the cannabis part, we have to get the licensing to open again in Alberta and to really open up in Ontario. But the company seems to have access to capital. You mentioned that point. They talked about on their call. I had a concern about the Aurora ownership, that maybe Aurora would be a forced seller. I've confirmed that's not the case. So I don't know. This is right up my alley. It's growth at a reasonable price now.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll keep that one on the ticker. It's been on the ticker that streams across our show every day for probably the last year, just because since we interviewed James Burns, I was super bullish on the idea, and then of course the market did what the market does.
It didn't work. I know.
Right. It hasn't worked yet.
Right. Well, let me say another thing. So we know that the cannabis space is really, there's some institutional investing. And certainly a name like Alcanna trading on the TSX can get some institutional sponsorship. But the reality is our sector is driven by retail traders. And I know that when you take something that's like this, that's not a pure play, it makes it really challenging for a lot of people, and they'd rather just buy the pure play. And I appreciate that sentiment, but if you can get this other thing for free and they're paying up for the pure play that maybe isn't any better, it seems like a layup to me, James.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, and in the spirit of the retail storefront, we saw MedMen got a $250 million cash injection last week. And we did discuss that a little bit, but do you think that the investor in MedMen was a well-respected and seasoned, as far as that's possible, cannabis institutional investor? Do you see that has improved the outlook for MedMen going forward and made it a better investment proposition?
So a resounding yes, to be real clear. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, I kind of defended MedMen, and I have no reason to defend them or not defend them, but people were writing them off as dead and saying they wouldn't be able to raise money. And so this puts the kibosh on that talk. I think everybody can appreciate some of the challenges that MedMen is facing right now, but at the same time to appreciate the huge opportunity that they have, as well as to put in perspective that their valuation is way below peers. And there's been a lot of excitement in the space, in the MSO or multi-state operator space recently. We've seen a lot of these new issues that struggled with that fourth quarter deluge of reverse takeovers not only get back to their deal price, but explode. We're talking about Cresco, Harvest, Curaleaf. Those three have totally rallied back through those overhang prices. And so at the same time, MedMen is just bouncing along the bottom. So if your viewers aren't familiar with Jason Adler and his team at Gotham Green, I consider them one of the preeminent investors in the space. Jason's a humble guy. He would say he doesn't deserve it. Whatever, he happens to be that. And if you want to look at their success, all you have to do is look at Kronos. They were the people who came in and took over Kronos Group when it was PharmaCann and failing. They recapitalized it at 20 cents. it's been 100+ bagger. So they know what they're doing. I know, I'm close with them. I was concerned that it's not Kronos, that Gotham maybe would be turned off by some of the drama that we've been seeing. But I think this is, you can look at this $250 million financing as having two key things. One, it takes off the table the idea that MedMen is not a going concern, at least for now. And two, it tells you that a very serious investor thinks that all this drama is just that. It's drama and not going to be consequential to the company. So I think MedMen's made a lot of mistakes, and I'm glad that I don't have to defend them or attack them, but just to observe that it's been a rough go since they went public. I think they're learning. I think that this is a real validation about the future of MedMen, and I kind of like the stock down here.
Yeah, that's true. I think from where I sit, the great sort of the biggest flaw in the whole MedMen value proposition from the outset has been the dual ownership structure, the super voting structure. Now that I've kind of gone, well, going to like it or lump it, it's not going to change. I kind of now look at MedMen in that sort of regard, and it doesn't bother me so much that it's not like there's any serious risk that the guy's going to go out and start trying to cross cannabis with soybeans or something Looney Tunes like that. They've got a business plan they're focused on, they're executing. Obviously, $250 million is going to help them get there. And I've been to the MedMen stores, and I always have a pleasant experience. So there's no reason to assume that their sales aren't going to grow as they grow. So I'm with you there. They were sort of the favorite whipping boy of the market for a while. Great, Alan. Well then, sure. So here's a question for you. If we were to look at the market in segments, so we've got primary production. Cultivation of cannabis. You've got extraction, you've got consumer packaged goods, and you've got pharmaceutical products, technology, etc. Of those four sort of subsectors, which of those four excites you the most, or do they all sort of have their own individual value propositions?
Yeah, I would say the latter, and I would say you really ought to include a fifth bucket, which is kind of the ancillary space. And one of the things that happened last week that I found interesting that you may not have heard because it's here in the United States is Green Lane is going public. And so they filed an S1. This is going to be a NASDAQ IPO. I haven't weighed in at all, but I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention. If they make it to the NASDAQ, there's another vehicle. And so one of the things I've seen is the trading volumes in the United States for cannabis are really picking up. And while they're healthy in Canada, we're seeing names like Aurora, Kronos, Canopy Growth, even names like Curaleaf or Charlotte's Web. We're starting to see an increasing proportion of the trading in the United States. And so some of those names I just mentioned aren't even on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, like Curaleaf and Charlotte's Web. In this case, get an ancillary name with a lot of revenue. They reported about $180 million pro forma, $178 million actually in revenue in 2018. That might have been, 2018. And I think this is going to open up people's eyes to other ways to invest in the space. And I've mentioned to you before, their client, and I have a big position in my model portfolio, is Kushco Holdings, used to be Kush Bottles. There's another company, GrowGen. MJ Freeway is going public through a NASDAQ vehicle. Hopefully that thing closes. But the point I'm trying to make is the NASDAQ is opening up. I think a lot of investors would feel more comfortable not trying to make that decision that you just asked me to make. Like, do I want to be on cultivation? Do I want to be on processing, retail, what have you? And so these ancillary companies, if they have good liquidity, trade on major exchanges, and have gazillions of revenue, I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic for the whole market, James.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's great, Alan. I think that's good enough for this week, and we'll come back to you again soon. I really appreciate your input. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. I'm joined now by Matt Bottomley, the analyst from Canaccord Genuity. Matt, welcome back.
How you doing, James?
Great, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. So tell me, Matt, what is there in the cannabis space that's really got your attention this week?
Well, it's been a busy few weeks, particularly on the M&A side. So we saw not a small deal, but it's sort of a tuck-in deal that HEXO, I keep wanting to call them Hydropothecary, but I think it's an easier name anyways, that HEXO did. So they bought Newstrike in a $200 million plus deal. That kind of gave them some more, I think, some more provincial distribution, some more fish hooks out there to try and get their product, which is selling very, very well in Quebec, into other markets. It gets them some indoor cultivation as well, which, as you know, is very important if you want to eventually export into Germany or other international markets. Typically, those markets call for EU GMP certification, and it's it's almost impossible to get that in a greenhouse. So adding some indoor cultivation helps that. But what was very interesting about that deal in terms of my read-through from it was bought for almost no premium on Newstrike. And that's nothing to speak, from a negative standpoint on Newstrike as a company, but I think it goes to show, similar to last time when I was here and we were chatting, that if you're not a leader in the space, and I consider HEXO to be one of those sort of top 5 names in the space, there's not a lot of market share left out there, at least in this first year. So in order to make use of your indoor cultivation facilities that are all over Canada and some of these other names that are public companies, but still not in that top 5, it might make sense to pair off with another larger producer. We're able to take their paper in exchange and then grow with them, as opposed to try and battle in what will eventually be a commoditizing market. So the no premium in the takeout bid, as well as the fact that I think that most of the market share is going to be going to the canopies and the like of the sector, tells me that I think that there could be a huge crunch with some of these, for lack of a better term, tier 2 producers in the space in Canada.
Wow. A lot of the shareholders of Newstrike voiced their concern, their opposition to the idea of there not being a premium, because that's sort of the expectation in capital markets generally, is that if somebody takes you out, there's got to be a premium, and it's usually around 20% if things are well. So you're suggesting that they should be happy because just having the privilege of riding alongside HEXO's success with HEXO shares should more than offset whatever short-term discount they didn't, or premium they didn't receive. Yeah, I don't have a view one way or another. I didn't cover Newstrike before this on whether there should have been a premium baked in or not, but I think it does highlight the risk that it's very unlikely that there's a competitive bid process out there for many of these, again, tier 2 producers, if they're able to get an offer in at that level. So I think it definitely might make sense for some producers, whether it's HEXO or others, to take a smaller premium now if they're hitched to a wagon that's someone that could potentially be a leader in the sector overall. And HEXO has about 30% market share in Quebec, and part of this deal is to help them branch out their overall market share, which I think is 10% if you do a weighted average on every state. It's sort of the A plus B equals synergies, right? So if you add in this company into the mix, I think they might be better off in the longer run. But I think it is a bit of a red flag for everyone else out there that's a medium-sized producer, that there may not be these lofty 50% premiums anymore as the market continues to evolve. Sure. Okay. So how do you sort of value the premium opportunity in the MSOs in the United States relative to the international landscape at this point? I mean, I've just been hearing observing a lot of growing competition in the Latin American space, for example, and I'm curious as to do you have any sort of sentiment towards Chiron Life Sciences, for example, who's our client, by the way?
Yeah, I think Chiron's a great company. We have another analyst, Kim Hedlund of Canaccord, who covers them. I think, and I know they're not associated with the licensed producer, but I think a lot of the international opportunities out there, whether it's LATAM, whether it's Germany, Europe, these are much, much, much larger opportunity sets than what the Canadian market is. And you mentioned MSOs. MSOs have sort of optionality in more states that they can add to their portfolio, and that's a smaller opportunity overall, but much, much more near term. So we saw another M&A deal in the space between Harvest and Verano. That was one of the largest deals we've seen in the space yet, and that puts them with the highest pro forma dispensary count. So although they're not in Germany, Latin America, and we don't have any indication of when they might be an international company, if ever, for these MSOs, they have over 120 pro forma dispensaries now that are going to be built out over the next year and a half, which is the most out of any in the industry. So it's a little easier to get your head around. You can sort of benchmark it, plus and minus it if you don't think they're going to execute, and that's up to any individual investor. But a lot of the international optionality that the licensed producers had and that Chiron has, it's a much longer road, which means there's more risk associated with it. So I think the MSO trade, which has been outperforming over the last couple weeks right now, is much more attractive in the near term, let's call it 2019.
Sure. Okay, so the MSO trade is the most attractive for 2019. You sort of seem to have the impression that those international opportunities are bigger. I'm thinking of countries like Peru just announced its medical legislation. Peru's got 32 million people. There's nobody there servicing 32 million, or whatever portion of the population 32 million would generate in terms of patients. So are those opportunities that you think, yes, okay, MSOs now, but down the road, big sort of Latin American opportunities or big European opportunities like that represented by the fact that a country like Peru has just gone legal?
Absolutely. I mean, we're sort of in reverse order here in terms of where the opportunities are. So if you were to go 5 or 10 years out, the biggest market in the world is going to be ex-North America medical, let's say. That's as a totality. So that's going to be the biggest market in the world. The second biggest market in the world is going to be the US, whether it's federally legal at that point or whether it's still state by state. And then the third, and at least the categories we're talking about, is going to be the Canadian market, right? So obviously everyone right now is looking for the highlights and in the earning statements, what are these LPs doing in Canada? And admittedly there is some contribution in Germany, but that's really all we can track right now. And then second we can track is the MSOs, and third is the international. So what we can see is actually a lot smaller than the overall opportunity out there. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of great investment opportunities currently and in the future in markets like Peru, or pick your international market. But the trouble with it today is you don't really know how it's going to get regulated. You don't know how it's going to be taxed. You don't know how incumbents, or at least domestic economies, are going to be treated when it comes to rolling out those licenses versus allowing all these other publicly listed companies in Canada to come in. So because of all of those unknowns, there might be a huge opportunity on an EBITDA level, but when you risk adjust for it, it might not be really worth much today, other than optionality and something that's great to cobble into an existing asset, which is what many of the licensed producers have in Canada. Not a bad strategy in my view to be, let's say if you're Canopy, the #1 company in Canada in terms of the recreational market, and then have all this international optionality that potentially could be supported by Constellation's involvement down the road. Now, of course, with a company like Canopy, you pay for that today, and there's varying degrees of that throughout the whole opportunity set.
Interesting. That's quite a great and thorough analysis. Okay, so then, what about in the we've seen Canopy Rivers and Canopy Growth are expanding their sort of portfolio in Canada, which suggests to me that the Canadian opportunity is not necessarily done yet, at least for the large incumbents. I was kind of surprised to see them making such a big deal out of that, the fact that they're going to be so active in Eastern Canada.
Well, I'd say there's still a lot to happen in the Canadian market when it comes to execution. I think there will be M&A, as I mentioned before, where players that might be slightly lagging behind and others that want to increase their overall size and scale, it might make sense for them to pair up to get some efficiencies there. But there's not a lot of big ticket assets to buy, right? Right now it's more in the execution. Are you going to be able to get retail in Ontario, which I know is a very difficult process right now? Are you going to execute in, let's say, a better market like Alberta? On the East Coast, it's obviously not overly material to the overall opportunity, but it still is a good niche to have. So I think there's more execution to happen in Canada, and I think a lot of the cash and the balance sheets that still have hundreds of millions, and in Kronos and Constellation cases, $2.5 billion and $5 billion. There's a lot of cash that can still be deployed and a lot of stock that can still be issued, and I think most of the opportunity sets that will be deployed to will be international markets, and I bet they'd love it if it was US as well, but obviously right now it's not available to TSX and NYSE listed companies.
Sure. So the idea of riding a unicorn from infancy to billion-dollar plus company in a relatively short time frame relative to other industries is still alive in your view in the international context, definitely in the U.S. context. Selectively, and in the Canadian context, very little is left for that massive value creation exercise now that it's so mature. Yeah,
I would say that the problem with riding the unicorn, as you say, up to whatever tens of billions of dollars of market capitalization is, there's still going to be turbulence on the way up, assuming that these are going to be the winners on a global scale. So as much as I think if Canopy, and I'm just using them because they're the largest, if they end up being the global leader, there's multiple, there's two 2, 3, 4, 5 times upside from where their valuation is today, which says a lot considering it's almost a $20 billion company. But on the way up, you could easily see a 50% reset in the Canadian market this year, right? Because people are only going to wait so long. You get 2, 3, 4 quarters into the recreational market. If Germany and other international markets aren't turned on, investor sentiment might go the other way. And in this sector, it can turn on a dime very, very sharply. So as much as I think the leaders in this space still have upside in valuation, I think all investors should be expecting at some point there is going to be a reset onto the downside. But it's hard to know if that's going to happen from current levels or if they're going to go up another factor before that happens.
Sure. And one of the other events that I don't think we've had a chance to discuss in detail is the Aurora brought on Nelson Peltz as an advisor, and that immediately added $2 to $3 billion in market cap in the same week. Do you think that's a reflection of an overreaction to Nelson Peltz's contribution, or do you think it's fair value, or do you think he's going to add a lot more to that yet?
Well, it's hard to say it's fair value, considering just the quantum of, they have 1 billion shares outstanding and it jumped up $2. So, but I don't have an issue with it, and I'm not surprised that happened, because one, Nelson Peltz brings a breadth of experience in consumer goods, right? With all of his exposure with Wendy's and other CPG companies over the years. That's where this industry is going. Also, they disclosed obviously what the warrant strike price is, and I think people are, jumping the gun a bit, saying, okay, well, if he's coming on board to be successful, which he's a very successful investor, then obviously that levels. So there's almost a self-fulfilling element to that, and the stock price jumped up above it. But one thing I think it might telegraph that not a lot of investors are talking about, and again, I'm just speculating, is I don't believe someone like Nelson Peltz is coming on board for the Canadian opportunity. So that tells me he either A, believes, or it could be both, A, believes that the international optionality and what Constellation is doing is real, or B, eventually this is going to be brought to the US, and maybe Aurora is going to be a vehicle that would be favored. So if, for whatever reason, licensed producers were allowed to get involved in the US, then I think his value as a strategic investor is well worth whatever the accretion was in value that day. But admittedly, when the stock jumped up $2, obviously it's a bit more an excitement than anything else, but I'm absolutely not surprised.
I thought there was a third option there, and that is that he's already got an idea in mind, and that bringing him aboard was just a way to formalize his compensation for an idea that has yet to be announced. That's all speculation, obviously.
Could very well be.
Yeah. All right, great, Matt. We'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for your participation as usual. It was great, and we'll have you back soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Thanks very much. All right, in a minute, Steve Misener will be here, but first, this. Let's talk about Aurora. Recently, your financials, you more or less delivered on.
Here are the headlines moving markets today.
If you're lucky to buy it 3 days ago at 37 cents,
and I think it has a lot to do with some of these smaller names giving really.
Recreational cannabis is here.
It's quite dry. So I'm going to eliminate the stocky bits.
Show my participation.
Hey, Steve Misener joins me now, certified financial analyst extraordinaire. Steve, welcome back.
Thanks, James. Pleasure to be here.
Steve, I think we'll delve right into one of your areas of expertise. German bond yields went negative. Now there's over $10 trillion in debt that yields negatively. What does this portend for the greater economy, and what other currencies might soon follow?
Well, the 10 trillion, I believe, is an aggregate of global currencies, because the Swiss has been negative for quite a while. I mean, the Swiss is one of the most prudently managed currencies in the world, and just for the viewers, so they understand what negative means, it means that you give them $100, you buy T-bills for $100, and you get back less than $100 in 3 or 6 or 9 months, which is an incredible perspective, but it just shows the security associated with that particular currency, or the hardness of that currency versus other currencies which tend to inflate.
Right. So what I mean, this is the thing. What kind of individual or what kind of institution says, here, I'll give you $10 and I'm fine with you giving me back $9.80?
Well, they view that the currency is going to be the security versus maybe a decline in other currencies, and that's really. It isn't just the interest rate, it's holding that particular currency versus other currencies. And remember, all currency investments are all relative, even if we treat gold as a currency, as some people do. But it's, do I want to hold US dollars? Do I want to hold Japanese yen? Do I want to hold euros? And it's always a relative thing and where you're going to be. And people that hold short-term investments, even large institutions holding that aggregate of $10 trillion, they're about parking cash or sitting on the sidelines because they don't want to hold other things at that moment. So it does kind of boggle the mind that someone would be agreeable to take less back, even a small haircut, after a few months. But that's because they believe that that currency in the market is saying that that currency is the strongest versus other currencies.
Okay.
And even interestingly, the Australian bond, which has always had high yields for decades, the Australian market always had high yields. The 10-year the 10-year government bond in Australia hit an all-time low at about 1.75%, and that is an incredible story and reflects the global aggregate support in the bond market in general.
Sure. Does this in any way equate or translate to a situation where it's better to deploy capital and get a guaranteed loss, knowing that the loss is finite and predictable, than it is of taking the risk of deploying the same amount of capital into economic growth, an investment in growth in an industry, in a commodity, in a sector, because taking a loss is of a far greater certainty than getting any sort of return from a higher risk investment in the general historic context of what an investment is?
That's a sound analogy, or sound kind of situation that you played out, and it's really about relatively short term. If you put out money for 3 years or 5 years, you are going to start getting those positive yields, even if they're rather skinny. So this is a relatively short term situation, although
so this is only short-term money that's getting the discount.
Yeah, because the yield curve typically has this kind of upward trajectory. You commit to debt securities in almost any currency over long periods of time. You're assuming greater risk because of the unknown down the road over multi-years. So you typically, and the market typically in a normal yield curve trajectory, you get some positive yield. It's just very unusual when the short end dips negative. Now it is in some models and some history that negative short-term returns can be problematic because they're forecasting much weaker economic growth, and that's where the economists are really trying to tighten their numbers. There's several Fed governors speaking this week, and people will be watching closely to see what their comments are.
Sure. So we saw gold catch a bit of a bid today. Oil is still in the shitta, as they say in the UK. And the S&P is looking awfully shaky and volatile at these, again, all-time highs. So do all of these signals, a major G7 currency going negative in the short term, gold catching a bid, oil price is still in the crapper, does all that sort of portend a general broad economic direction that sort of inclines more towards high risk, negative outlook as opposed to a lower risk, positive outlook, like some analysts are saying that, oh no, we've got another 7 years of this bull market?
Well, 7 years would be very optimistic because it's been a long, long bull market of really 10 years to date. It was really March of 09 was the double bottom after the 08 meltdown, if you will. So it's really been 10 years this month that the U.S. markets and global stock markets have been on a rise. But gold, with its rally, remember, gold is by many treated as a currency as much as anything else, whereas oil is a consumable good. So the detachment of oil being weak could reflect a possible global slowdown of economic growth, whereas gold really is less influenced by economic growth and more by a store of value and as a relative currency to other other currencies out there. And as we said on the last time I was on a few weeks back, that China turned the corner in October and November, the first time in several years that they became big net buyers of gold. So people are watching that as possible backing for their currency down the road.
Mm-hmm. You bet. Okay, so where would you be deploying capital now?
Well, I mean, I think that staying a little bit powder dry in cash is okay. I think that we've obviously seen good moves in some of the interest sensitives, but there still are some good values in the Canadian dividend sectors, and I think that probably the U.S. is not going into recession. I think it may be overdone. So there are probably still some areas of good, sound economic growth that's being overemphasized right now. I mean, the labor market's still very strong. It's interesting to note that the Fed was so bearish about and raising rates and so concerned about overheating in the economy with the big 4.2% GDP growth in Q2 last year, but that really was an anomaly. It was going to slow down. So here we have the Fed being aggressive in December, and in April, or in fact March, 3 months later, now they're talking about rate cuts possibly. It's crazy how that turn has happened, because they have access to more economic information than anyone on the planet about the U.S. and global economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's confounding. How does Brexit figure into all this? Does anybody care? Does it matter?
It's still a wide unknown, and markets are jittery about that, certainly. This hard Brexit or no Brexit, or what's going to happen in the middle, and any time that a major country's government is considered a little bit, I'd say, unstable, only because we don't know the future of the Prime Minister May there at the moment. That creates uncertainty, and people like to back away from that. So I'd say that the unresolved nature of Brexit is probably the more difficult thing in the short term, rather than it going one way or another, being bullish or bearish. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that the people I've spoken to based in London, they don't believe that banking is going to move to Frankfurt or other locations. It's going to stay in London regardless of whether Brexit or whatever type of Brexit occurs. It's simply a global center of banking, and I don't think that's going to change.
Mm-hmm. What about the issue of the Irish border? I mean, economically, not such a huge contributing factor to the entire European equation. But for me, I look at the political uncertainty that sort of accrues to that question, and I wonder if a lack of a Brexit deal and certainty as to how that border could be treated could reignite some of the conflicts of the era of the Troubles.
I don't believe it would. I mean, I'm not an expert in the field, although I was in both Ireland's Republic and Northern Ireland in June, 8-9 months
Partying
ago.
with Van Morrison, if I recall correctly.
Indeed, but I don't think it would generate those kinds of issues. But certainly from an economics perspective, and more critically, is that the Northern Irish parliamentarians who are in the British Parliament have been supporting May's Conservative Tory government and maintaining that support so that the Tories can stay in power. That's the key. So they have a great deal of bargaining power because of that swing support in propping up the British government. But it is a complicated issue because as of last June, you just drive right through the border, and probably still today, and putting some kind of hard border where Northern Ireland is not part of the EU to some degree under Brexit, and the Irish Republic is, that's certainly problematic for the people of Ireland, and therefore plays into the stability of the Tory government. And but I don't think it would be cause for the kinds of conflicts in the past.
Interesting. Well, I guess we'll have to see how all this plays out. Steve, we're going to leave it there for now. Thanks very much for joining us again.
Great. Thank you, James.
Coming up next, Dread Special Pirate Ed Milewski is going to be here with his particular brand of chart analysis, but before that, we're going to take a look at the upcoming events in the cannabis space.
Here are some upcoming events in the cannabis space. Cronos Group are releasing their Q4 financials on March 26th with a conference call for investors at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. CanTrust are releasing their Q4 financials 2 days later on March 28th with the conference call at 8 a.m. Eastern. Oxley are also releasing their Q4 financials on March 29th. Green Thumb Industries are releasing their Q4 financials on April 9th with a conference call for investors at 5 p.m. Eastern. And finally, TerraSend are releasing their Q4 financials on April 30th.
So anybody happen to watch the news that TGOD beginning sales through the grower circle to patients across Canada likely had their eyes raised that, oh my gosh, does that mean TGOD is actually selling weed? And sure enough, they are. Did you catch that press release, Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Anyways, so
maybe.
There's the launch of the growers circle is something that Brian Athade commented on today. He says, our certified organic cannabis is a premium experience for patients. We're proud of our product and excited to be sharing it with Growers Circle members. Do you know what the Growers Circle is?
No.
No?
I guess it's a circle.
Of growers. That's a good bet.
Like you know how they used to have those circles.
The Growers Circle, just so you want, enough of your tomfoolery.
Okay. The
Growers Circle is a select group of patients across Canada who now receive TGOD's first certified organic flower. So they put this group together to have a limited rollout of the company's products.
Is it sort of like the inner circle?
Kind of.
If you're in the inner circle?
It's like when you sign up for, first notification of concert tickets. It depends how, or good analogy, business class. When you sign up to be upgraded to business class,
yep,
your success in that pursuit will be determined by how valuable you are to the enterprise and what your pecking order is in the food chain.
Huh.
Does that make any sense?
In other words, it's a sort of an elite status kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I like to sum it up nice and succinctly.
I do too. That's a nice headphone you got hanging out of your ear.
What, this one?
Yes. Yes,
it's my new earring.
It looks funny.
I'm just trying.
All right, so give me some charts, Ed. What do you got today? What are we looking at?
Well, you know what? I think we have to look at, on a day like today, that would be like today, I think we got to look at, you know what? Gold.
Okay. Yes, we were talking about gold.
Well, I mean, gold today had a very decent day. Markets are listless. Mm-hmm. Marijuana sector is kind of slightly down to flat. Nothing going on.
Nope.
But
nothing much.
Nothing much. But look at gold. What's going on?
Is that gold?
Well, that's the
Trust,
ETF.
SPDR.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the SPDR. It's up basically $10 today.
Wow.
From Friday's close at 4 o'clock.
Huh.
So let's just focus in on this one little aspect here.
Okay.
And I gotta put up my little clicker here.
What are we looking at here? It looks like
It's a 3 month.
Okay, so these are the last 3 months, not any 3 months.
Well, 3 months 20 years ago.
Because that wouldn't be very helpful.
But there's the peak, okay, and it looked like it broke out.
What number was that? What was the number at the peak?
Well, it was about $30 higher than where it is now. Let's say that.
Okay.
Because the ETF.
Where's it at now then?
The ETF tracks gold.
Yeah.
It's not the same number. Like gold right now is about $13.30. So this would have been the equivalent of $13.60.
Wow.
It's about $30 part.
Nice.
Now we went down here and it looked like all hell is breaking loose just below the Bollinger Band, and then we got another rally going. Mm-hmm. And here we are getting close to the upper band. Gold is slightly, it's been positive. It's up there. This is what we got to get through. That's the number, I think, folks. We get through that, and then you could argue it's a bit of clear sailing for a while.
Yeah. Wow.
I like it looks very, very modern art there,
Yeah. There's always that phallic implication with the twin orbs that disturbs me, and I'm sure the rest of the audience.
Well, it's easy to disturb you.
but it's always in a positive way.
Because you're such a disturbing guy.
Dan S. says, won't lie, bought back into RNX nickel today. Or it says RNX, I'm assuming he means RNX nickel.
Okay.
So, see, it's not everybody who's just about the gold. Burnhampton says CXXI is gold.
CXXI has done well. I think it's still over $2 if I'm not mistaken, maybe $2.10.
Immortal Warrior Angel says Ed is gay.
Really?
Yeah.
What did I do wrong now? I'm getting shit from James. I'm getting shit from God. Everybody's shitting on me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I find that a funny statement, but you know, he's close, only 50% of the way away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it has to be
open-minded. Let's say I'm open-minded.
Open-minded. You're accepting. You're not.
Judgment is not my domain. I don't judge.
Right.
And therefore, don't judge me.
No, exactly.
Okay. I won't judge you.
No.
Don't judge me.
Yeah.
Here come the judge.
Compound interest stock guy. Exactly person X. I don't know what that means. Everybody's laughing their heads off now.
So you know, we were talking about the debt thing, right? And Steve's
Immortal Warrior Angel now wants you to know. He says, "Love you, Ed."
This is how it starts.
Well, you
Cocktails
got
at 4:30. Notice the way what I said. What kind of tales? Just saying. Whoa! Let's slow down.
This is a rated PG audience here. This is a financial show.
Not anymore.
This is not late night television.
I got my own problems.
Boy, oh
mine are
boy.
very serious.
Yeah.
So yeah. At the end of in December, I guess the amount of debt that was getting negative yields was about $8 trillion.
Yes.
And I think today they said it's now closer to $10 trillion.
So that's
in
disturbing.
4 months. So rates are dropping. Rates can only drop in this world, and that long end, if everybody's shitting themselves because they think no growth.
So that's like, rather than put my money in the bank and receive interest, because that's normally a reliable thing, that's become so high risk that I'd rather guarantee a loss and at least know what the loss is going to be.
So I was just reading, why would anybody buy these things?
Well, that's
okay. Here's one of the answers.
Okay.
Some institutions cannot buy anything but government debt. In other words, they have to buy government debt because they can't buy anything else.
How many governments are there?
Well, there's 195 countries.
How many are negative yielding on their debt?
The big ones, of course, are Japan, Germany, Switzerland.
Okay, so the default conclusion must be that the safest debt in the world is Japan, Germany, and Switzerland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the market tells us, right? Yeah. If that's the only place where you put your money, knowing they're going to keep some before they give it back, you've got to be saying that this is safer than all of the 191 other countries, risking their promise to pay me a yield in 3 months.
Yeah,
like
you know what? Now you know what? I
capital letters.
I hate drawing conclusions from these things because
you think that's an oversimplification. Then?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I do. I do. For instance, how can the debt on government of Spain be less than the debt on the government of the United States? I don't understand that.
No.
But maybe it's because the debt in the United States is so big, so prohibitively monstrous, that there's no way they can pay it back, so they say, yeah, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is.
So they're just going to keep borrowing to keep the military at the strongest in the world so that they can say, you will borrow you will lend us money. You will take our bonds in exchange. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Oh,
Boy,
I got that backwards.
Wink, wink.
Wing,
nudge.
wing.
So yeah, that's a nice, yeah. Smudge, smudge. Smudge, smudge.
Hey, this guy says I look like I'm on a Western show with this vest on. Pow, pow! Okay, enough of that.
Enough of that.
Enough of that tomfoolery.
More tomfoolery.
More tomfoolery. Hawaiian Western Great Spirit says. Hawaiian Western. I get that.
Hawaiian Western.
Hawaiian, like the Hawaiian, floral shirt.
Yeah.
Where's
your hula hoop? Where's your hoop?
Okay.
So that was the one chart we wanted to look at. We wanted to look at that.
Oh, that's your first chart of the day. 8 minutes after the hour, and we've only had one chart. We should give you a half an hour
we can
for
really
charts.
Stretch it out. Really stretch it out. SPX. Let's see what the NASDAQ did today. Well, look.
William Lay comments, he took his eye off of VFF today and it got smoked, down 11 points.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. S&P is down slightly, just down slightly, but it's showing a green candle. We may have a little bit of a rally here. But I have to note that the bands, let's have the, there we go. There we go.
Oh, Ivan Black says, like where I'm right now, Hawaii. Oh, he's in Hawaii. Damn. Maybe we should move the show to Hawaii, Ed.
Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe
Next winter.
Maybe we'll.
Spring is coming.
Well, spring has sprung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Douglas Bell questions Ventura. He means Ventura Cannabis, company that, yes, we invested in. And, well, it's sort of ticking downward, and we're waiting for something to happen. But remember, we had Jacob Gamble here, who was indicating a expectation for up to a $25 million exit revenue-wise in 2018, and so we shall see.
We shall see.
Yes.
We shall see.
Yes.
Anyway, S&P down small today, which is kind of nice to see after that horrendous drop of 50 points on Friday. People got spooked on Friday, but no follow through today. This may mean it's going to try and grind higher for a while. We got a little green candle there. It's sort of a doji.
Where?
It's so small you can't see it.
Wow.
It's an invisible candle. That little one right there.
Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah, so that's like a feeble recovery.
It's like indecision after a big drop. We had a green candle there after 4 days of down, and we've had a rally. But, for all what's going on here, since about here to here, we've gone nowhere. So in the last a month, 5 weeks, say, this is a 3-month chart, the S&P has basically gone sideways. Equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
Hey.
Everything is equilibrium.
Hey. So, look at this. I put a circle there. Looks like we're playing football now here.
Yeah.
There's the football. There's the goalpost.
Looks like little spaceships.
Okay.
What the hell?
Anyway.
Was that technical analysis?
Yeah, it's Okay, so those two charts.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the viewing audience would like to request something that they've seen out there that's moving sharply, moving.
All right, request your charts, and Ed will do his best to confound your greatest.
Your sense of
sense of awe.
Normalcy.
He'll conjure up your sense of awe. Okay. Ventura. Let's take a look at Ventura. VCAN.
Oh.
That's my request.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
And is that the CNX?
Yes.
Is it safe to say that? Well, here we go. Oh, that actually, there's something there that I like that I like.
What's that?
Nice big tail. On that tail. There's a big tail on today's candle, which would suggest maybe a short-term bottom. And we've had, generally a rising price here from about 30 cents all the way up to, wow, it's a triple in the last 3 months.
How about that?
A double and then a triple.
Look at that, eh?
And today it tried to go lower, but came back. We may have another test of this, I think.
Okay.
So what can I say? Look at this.
Yeah, looks good.
Pretty predictable.
Looks pretty predictable.
Looks like a percentage, upside down percentage line.
Great. Okay, joining me now via Skype is Jason Zandberg. He is the cannabis analyst at PI Financial Corp. Jason, welcome back. Jason, so I've been asking everybody on the analyst front the same question, so I'm going to ask it of you as well. What are you seeing in the cannabis space that most excites you right now?
We're still paying a lot of attention to the U.S. space, and
I can hear him.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine now. Sorry.
Okay. We continue to like the U.S. space. We saw some data out of the Canadian rec stats in January that that show that Canada is really falling behind in terms of where we'd expected the first year of cannabis sales to be, whereas it's the opposite in a lot of the U.S. states. We're seeing numbers exceed where we were expecting. So we're focused very much on the U.S. multi-state operators, and zeroing in on states that we really like.
Sure. So what are your favorite states besides California?
Yeah, Florida is actually in a great position right now. Not only are we seeing sales doing really well in that state, but we're introducing smokable cannabis now, which wasn't allowed up until just recently. Edibles should be online here soon. So, and also we expect to see the patient count to grow quite rapidly. Florida, of all the medical only states, Florida is number 2 right now, and it passed Arizona in the last 6 months, and we think it's one of the faster growing states for the medical programs.
Sure. So out of the country, out of the states right now, Jason, that aren't legal yet, some pretty big populations in like Texas is not legal yet, is it?
No.
And so what are the
Texas
next big ones to go legal?
Is the big state to follow.
Okay, so when do you think that'll happen?
I would expect in the, it's hard to gauge, but we're seeing this trend accelerate. So, I would probably say in the next 5 years. But that being said, now that we're starting to see the legislative process convert states into, either medical or recreational states, we're not at having to wait every 2 years for special ballots. So, unfortunately, New Jersey didn't have their vote today, but we do see that the legislation process could rapidly expand the number of legal states, both on the medical and the recreational side. But in terms of Texas, I would say 2 to 5 years.
Wow. Okay, cool. What do you make, though? I've talked to every analyst about this that I've spoken to today too, so I'm kind of staying thematic and getting a nice cross-section of answers, which so far they're more or less the same. But we saw Peru go legal 2 weeks ago. Peru has, at this point, no operating companies, no licenses, 32 million people. How much of an opportunity is inherent in the international sort of scene as represented by recently licensed Peru, in your opinion?
Yeah, the international markets are definitely interesting. The upside is pretty significant, but it's how to get product to market. We haven't seen huge volumes for exporting cannabis to other medical markets. Germany should have been a fantastic country, which that's probably where the most exports are headed to. But even there, the numbers aren't exceeding our expectations, or even where we'd expect them to be at this point. So international markets are tricky to play. We would expect long-term most of the production would be within the country. So domestic production in whatever country goes legal, and that's that'll be up to how quickly licenses will be distributed in each one of the countries. So it's like I said, there's good upside on the international market, but there's not a clear path as to how North American companies get there.
Okay, so in your comment initially where you said that the Canadian large caps are disappointing because of their sort of shortfalls in reporting revenue as a result of Canadian legalization, and that driving your preference towards U.S. MSOs, is that a temporary phenomenon in the Canadian sense because Canada's having the growing pains of this province-by-province distribution system? Or do you think it's more a reflection of the idea that 80% of the cannabis being bought by recreational users in Canada is still coming from unlicensed sources?
Yeah, no, there's definitely growing pains in the Canadian market. We do expect it to get back on track, at some point in the next few years. With October this year coming up with the introduction of edibles, that we'll see again growth in sales. And you know, I think Canada will eventually get there. The one problem that I have with the Canadian market is, if you look at the government's approach to legalization, it appears as though they're more focused on controlling the market than expanding the market. In the U.S., it's the opposite. Most governments look at it as a tax base and they want to grow that cannabis market. So, you know, in my opinion, I think the Canadian government would rather see a $6 billion black market turn into a $4 billion legal market as opposed to, you know, create a much bigger legal market. Because we're, you know, everything that has been getting in the way of this market expanding in Canada has been, you know, really slow licensing. I mean, licensing has picked up over the last couple of years, but it's still, obviously, we've got a supply shortage, and they should have been licensing a lot faster, more rapidly, a year before the start of rec sales. And that's really hurting this market. So if the government can sort of get out of their way and allow this market to flourish, you know, we could see some better upside for sales. But I really don't know if that's their intent long term. I think they're more focused on controlling the market than expanding it.
So we've got Canopy with a $20+ billion market cap, thanks to the participation of Constellation Brands. You've got Aphria in some state of negotiation still with Green Growth Brands. That could become something huge if you look at Green Growth's Peter Horvath's former association with brands like Victoria's Secret, etc. Aurora still is sitting out there as this, you know, independent Canadian unicorn story in the cannabis space that doesn't yet have a partnership with a major globalized branded element. Is that something that could have a sector-wide positive catalytic influence on the Canadian market generally? Like when we saw Constellation put the $4.5 billion into Canopy, it lifted the whole sector by collectively 30% over the next 3 months. Is that something that we might expect to see happen should something materialize as a result of the participation of Nelson Peltz as advisor, who could probably bring something like that to the table for Aurora?
Yeah, no, anytime they're one of these you know, transactions, it definitely is bullish for the entire sector. In terms of commenting about Aurora, you're right, they don't have a dance partner right now. You know, it's likely that they have you know, been in discussions with various third parties, and that's just because there's been a lot of companies that have been sniffing around the Canadian market for a number of years now. So, but yeah, it definitely would be a catalyst for the market. But in terms of timing or whether it will happen or not, you know, it's hard to say at this point.
Sure. All right, that's great, Jason. I appreciate your participation as usual. I look forward to talking to you next. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You bet. So there you have it. The U.S. MSO story is unanimously number one, but both Matt and Alan Brochstein are optimistic about the scale and scope of the international opportunity, though Alan was very clear that he was not comfortable with the security that you could bring to any equation in the international context, because regulation is not as reliable, regulatory compliance is not as thoroughly administered, but you know, it's still a much bigger markets at the end of the day, and if somebody cracks the code.
What's the total market cap now of the companies that are public? Do you have any? I think it said around 150 billion. Does that sound right?
I haven't done that exercise in.
John had that answer, I think, with Cam.
Okay, 150 billion.
I thought that was the number, because I mean, look, where does it get? Does the number have to eventually get bearish? Like, can they keep coming into it and can only go so high?
Well, if you look at the .com era, by the time that blew up, $5 trillion disappeared. So arguably it was $5 trillion that came into the space. Where are we at? 140 billion? Got a long way to go. A long way to go. We're not even through the first inning yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's really true.
I know, but remember, in the United States, the .com thing was big, but well, I'm going to take that back. I was going to say something, but then I thought Nortel went from nothing to, 300 billion.
Yeah.
And back to zero.
Right.
So I was going to say Canada didn't participate, but that's not true.
Canada did.
Okay, I corrected myself.
Well, and don't forget, one of the biggest collapses of value was WorldCom, and that guy was a basketball player from the Manitoba High School.
Yeah.
Let's not forget.
Yeah. So would he have been in like March Madness?
March Madness?
Yeah.
You
don't even know what March Madness is, so that's bad.
What's March Madness?
Well, you're gonna just
tell me.
Viewers, tell them what March Madness is. Come on, viewers.
All right, what's March Madness?
Ding, 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 ding. It's flashing now. Your computer blew up.
Richie Rich wants to know who will be the canopy of the U.S. Hello, Rich. I know you want to see my yellow plants. Don't worry, they're getting green. Just a couple days till you see them again. Who will be the canopy of the U.S.?
Well, you could argue. I don't know. Tilray?
You don't have an idea?
Tilray's capped at what? 7-8 billion? 6-7 billion?
Yeah.
It's holding around $68.
Yeah. What about Harvest? That deal with Verano has the largest numbers, as Matt said, pro forma, largest number of dispensaries in the country.
Is that the one that is in Florida?
Harvest in Verano. We just had them here last week.
Oh, right. Isn't there a Shakespeare play, Two Gentlemen from Verano?
Verona.
Okay, I know that. I know. Come on. Hey. You know what my middle name is?
Shakespeare.
The Bard.
The Bard. Is that self-appointed middle name?
Yep. I gave that to myself.
Really?
I read some Shakespeare. I read a couple verses. Anyway.
So Mary Kemp says not to overlook acreage. Cura has the biggest market cap according to Compound Interest Stock Guy.
Cura's got a 4.3
McNally
billion.
Investing says iAnthus. Way to start a conversation, Rich. Way to go. I love it.
Kronos capped at up $1.55 today.
Kronos. Blueberries Medical Corp. CSE, BBM, all issues. Reason at the request of the company. Oh, so a company's halted. Heinrich. Blueberry Medical. Isn't that Serafino Iacono's thing?
Yeah.
Very careful there.
Look at flour at 55 cents.
Yeah. Liberty and Cresco in Florida. Well, that's good point. Good point.
Hey, we need a good. We need some good stories out there.
There's no clear giant in the United States. Like acreage, okay, yes.
Tilray,
but,
Curaleaf.
Yeah, but there's no they're all three massive guys that, they're all in the same realm.
You know what they should do? They should do a merger between the three of them, and then they'd be a giant.
Well, that's a good idea. Talk to their bankers about that.
Hey, let's start a rumor.
Who's going to take a haircut and who gets the premium?
Who's going to lose their job of CEO? That's the big question. That's why it'll never happen.
If I was getting the premium, I would voluntarily give up my job.
You're a little different.
Yeah, I'm a lazy bum.
Well, you don't have a monster ego.
No, that's true.
Yeah, you just got a little ego.
Yeah, little what?
Hero.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, what do you think?
I don't know. Are you drinking these days?
I'm on the wagon.
No, shit, me too.
I haven't had it.
I had a glass of wine last night.
Oh, that lasted long.
And I had a beer on Saturday.
It's like my former gentleman I worked with who used to take every January.
Former gentleman? He's not a gentleman anymore?
Well,
you don't work with him
former, yeah, whatever.
Okay, you know what we haven't done yet today, which we should do, is let's take a look at the
indices.
The indices.
The indices. How did I know you were going to say that?
Because you just know where I'm going with this shit. I mean, it's remarkable.
But this poop.
It's uncanny.
Poop, I say.
It's corny. No, it's uncanny. Okay, so looking at the Midas Letter Large Cap Index, it has closed out the day up 1.19%, which is interesting. Why would everything else is down? The Venture Index down 2.7%, the CSE Index is down 1.58%, and the Small Cap Index is down 3%. So let's see, why is a large cap up? What was the driver there? We'll go to the index page. Just click on that little puppy here. Where's all the energy? So Kronos Group adding 6%.
Big one.
up $1.55 was probably, that was the main driver of the lift in today's large cap index.
Oxley's number 2.
Yeah, that's misleading though.
Not moving like an ox though, is it?
It's misleading because it's such a small percentage of the market cap on a weighted basis. So really...
Misleading?
Yeah, of the 1.12% lift, I would say 80% of that comes from Kronos Group. The rest of the 20% is split between these other 3 risers. Oh no, okay, so here's Aurora put on 2.2%. So between the lift between Aurora and Kronos on a fully weighted basis, these two probably make up 60%, no, 50% of the index. So that would be the biggest drivers. Let's see, let's take a look what Oxley's market cap is right now. 578 million. Just hanging on to the large cap index position by claws.
I understand they have a lot of cash.
A lot of cash.
Like a lot of cash, but I don't.
A lot of cash.
Well, their report's their earnings are going to be up at the end of the month.
Okay, let's go take a look at how much cash they actually have here. I'm going to go.
How do you do that? But that's going to be out of date.
Well, it depends when their last report was.
Well, it was a while ago.
Cannabis. Well, if you look at the last 2 quarters, that should give you an idea of their burn rate and a fair expectation of what's to come, barring any major change.
Okay.
So the last financial was November 12th. Let's take a look at the financial.
That was for what, September 30th?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
quite
see.
Out of date.
Let's see what the cash is at the end of September.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see what it is at the end of September, shall we?
Well, let's.
What do you want to do?
I want to see what the cash is at the end of that period.
Oh, you know what? Let's check out Q3 2018 financials. $236 million.
How much?
$236 million.
Okay, so we're going to come up with numbers here.
Yeah, this week.
This
tomorrow.
week.
Yeah.
At the end of the month.
And we're going to have a rip into
Let's just do a little comparison. Just see if there's any burn there.
All right, we will.
Burn, baby, burn.
Disco Inferno. What's coming up tomorrow? What's coming up tomorrow? You want to know what's coming up tomorrow? Bruce Linton's going to be here at 3:30 live on the show. No rehearsal, no preamble, no questions in advance. We're going to rake him over the coals. No, he's going to give us an update on where the company's headed next and why it's going to continue to lead the industry worldwide. Aaron Buganim is going to be here, Managing Director of CanMart. Rahul Sarugasar is here from Paradigm Capital. Post your questions in the comments section for Bruce and all those guys, and we'll see you all tomorrow. That concludes our show for today. Don't forget to subscribe.
Right.